ser and estar. The reason this is such a tricky thing for a lot of students is that in English both verbs are translated as to be. This is sort of misleading though because these verbs are used in very different contexts and they're not interchangeable. So, we'll start by just talking about sort of the general feeling you should get from each verb, which will hopefully clarify the more specific uses that we'll delve into in a few minutes. So, usually when you think of ser, you want to think of things that are more permanent, and that includes things like physical characteristics, sort of character traits, and what I think of as definitions or sort of linking sentences. So saying, this is a map, which would be esto es un mapa. So you see you have ser there. Estar, on the other hand, is used for things that are more temporary in nature. So things like feelings and emotions, temporary states. Estoy cansada, I am tired, it's a temporary state. And most location sentences. And we'll talk about this as well, because that can get a little tricky. So, now that we've underlined sort of the general broad ways to think about ser and estar, we can look at some more specific uses. Okay, so let's look a little more closely at ser. Now we said ser is used for permanent characteristics. So that would be things like soy baja, I am short, or soy graciosa, I am funny, which is not true. And of course these don't have to be soy, they can be, eres cómico, you are funny. Ella es tonta, she is stupid or silly. Things like that. Ser is also used, as I said, for defining sentences. So that would be something like, el libro es un diccionario. The book is a dictionary. Or Madrid es una ciudad. Ciudad. Wow, okay. Madrid is a city. Things like that. So as you can see, these uses are pretty similar. You're defining things and you're talking about personal sort of attributes, or permanent attributes, I'm sorry. And then the other use of ser that people can find confusing because, you don't think of it as being permanent is to talk about time. So when you're talking about time, you say, son las 8, it is 8 o'clock, or es la 1, it's 1 o'clock. And that's just sort of something wonky about the Spanish language, that you use ser to talk about time. So now let's talk about some uses for estar in a little bit more detail. So one that comes up pretty frequently is the emotions and feelings category. And that includes things such as, tú estás triste, you are sad, or ella está contenta, she is content or happy. Now one sort of, not quite exception, but rule breaker would be feliz, which is often used with ser. And that's just, something a little wonky. Another very common use of estar would be location. So, estoy en el hotel, I am in the hotel, or, nosotros estamos en la escuela, we are in school, or for objects, that is true as well. So, el lápiz está debajo del papel. The pencil is underneath the paper. And you can find more of those examples in the prepositions video. But the tricky thing about location is that ser is also used to talk about a few locations, and the way that you can tell whether you should use ser or estar for location, ser is used to talk about the location of events, so saying things like la fiesta es en el hotel. So this would translate more as the party is being held in the hotel. In a way that you can tell if you should use ser or estar is if you can replace the to be with is being held. So you wouldn't say I am being held in the hotel unless you're being kidnapped, and in that case you use a different verb altogether. But you would say the party is being held in the hotel. So in this instance you would use ser, whereas in this one you would use estar.